Next up, Russ and I are going to do a deep dive on The Night of the Hunter, reviewing the film and covering the quality of the new 4K disc from Kino. Welcome back to 4K Kings. I'm Matt.
I'm Russ.
Welcome to your home of physical media, movie reviews, two friends getting together, talking about life, talking about their passions, talking about getting old.
Yeah, just doing our YouTube thing.
Doing our YouTube thing way beyond our years. Our best years of our lives behind us. We're here to talk about old movies like The Night of the Hunter.
Thank you. So you seen Night of the Hunter?
Hey, have you seen this movie called Night of the Hunter? It's only been out for 100 years. Have you seen that yet? Well, out now, Russ, on 4K Ultra HD from Kino is The Night of the Hunter. And it is a film we have referenced, I don't know, countless times at this point. I know you recommended it for your Criterion releases. I think maybe it was this year or last year. I mentioned that I was excited for it to be released this year in our most anticipated. So many different people have commented saying how excited they are for this film to finally come out in 4K. Some people have even mentioned that they feel this movie is the greatest movie of all time. So there was a lot of conversation swirling this release that really like built me up into almost like a frenzy to where when I got it, I was like, oh God, really? I hope I like this thing. Like I'm always nervous to put it on.
I was worried about that when you said you were going to finally sit down and watch it. I was like, damn, I wonder if this has been a little overhyped.
A lot of pressure. It's a film that I did blind buy, and it's a film that I did watch, and I'm going to share my thoughts in a minute, just to talk about this release, which is one that's been stolen from Criterion. So they had previously put it out, and now Kino is delivering this to us in 4K, and what I will just tease by saying is a knockout release. As far as restoration, film quality, unbelievable to look at.
Well, I declare.
I did just want to set it up briefly, just in case anyone out there hasn't seen Night of the Hunter, is confused or wondering what this movie's even about. If you have seen all the conversation, but you still are a little bit in the dark.
It was Charles Laughton's only film that he directed. It has a character played by Mitchum who is a preacher, supposedly a man of God.
This movie came out in 1955. A guy named Charles Laughton is the one who directed it. And he had been a prolific actor for like 40 years, like 1928 to like 1962. And this was his only directing credit, his first and only. It stars Robert Mitchum, Shelley Winters, Lillian Gish, about a serial killer posing as a preacher who is like basically preying on widows for their money. This film is based on a novel of a true story based on a real guy named Harry Powers, who did this for real. And he was hanged for murder of 2 widows and 3 children. Initially, this was a complete bomb, a complete failure when it released.
That's why he never made another film, dude.
That makes me sad.
I've read many books about this movie, and a lot of people say that this broke his heart, and he didn't live very much long after the release of the film.
Considering the reevaluation of it, to go to your grave thinking you're a failure.
That's one hell of a reevaluation, though, to go from bomb to, hey, this is the best movie ever made.
Yeah.
His only movie, and a perfect first movie.
Why did people hate it back then? Why do people love it now? I just want to get it right out of the way, Russ. I absolutely loved it. I mean, I guess that's probably to be expected, but there's probably people that watch movies like this and are like, I don't know what the hype was, or I don't get it, or I don't like it, or whatever. Not only enjoyed the movie, the plot, the story, but ate it up for all the reasons that you hear people talk about it. The visual style, the acting, like just the dreamlike nature of it. Ate it up completely as it went on. I feel like the 2 main things with this movie is you got Robert Mitchum, and then you've got like just like the look and the vision of the vibe of this film. It's like 2 distinct things, and I don't know which one to start with. You can't have one without the other, or you can't to make this movie great. Let's just start with Robert Mitchum, who I just could not stop looking at him when he was on screen. Just his look, like this one right here where he's like in that audience, like this look of contempt, just disgust at someone he's going to probably murder. He's just got this presence where I was like, holy shit.
He's magnetic. And it's funny, like even watching it, and I know what his deal is. I know what he's there. Shit, I believe him.
I'm not familiar with any of his work, but I'll tell you what, I'll never watch Scrooge the same way.
I want to talk to the idiot who put that moron on the air.
I've never seen Cape Fear, but I was always aware of it because of the Scorsese remake, and I had seen parts of it. That's it, though. That would have been my only other experience, that, like you said, beyond Scrooged.
And out of everything that I've read about him at this point, and the films that he's been in, and it comes across to me like he was more a working actor and not a movie star. A lot of the interviews and stuff that I've seen where people are talking about him, they always refer to him like as a tough guy kind of character or actor and that kind of thing.
That sort of He-Man quality of Mitch's, which is real and which is there. I mean, he's very much a man's man.
There was a quote I read in regards to his acting philosophy that I just thought was like badass, and I was like, I gotta read this. This is not a tough job. You read a script. If you like the part and the money is okay, you do it. Then you remember your lines. You show up on time. You do what the director tells you to do. When you finish, you rest, and then you go on to the next part. That's it.
It's a job. You know, I've said it before, and I repeat it. One of the greatest movie stars that ever lived was Rin Tin Tin. That was a mother dog, so it can't be too much of a trick to it.
It's so crazy to me that this, like, it's just a job approach coming from someone who's so talented.
That's a generational thing also. I mean, you're not going to have anybody like that today. You're talking about a man who, his generation went to fucking World War II.
Yeah.
His generation lived the Great Depression and all. I mean, this film takes place, I believe, doesn't it? During the Great Depression?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Men didn't bitch back then. You know what I mean? Man, even if he felt differently, dudes like him just have that look on his face.
Look at his face, dude.
I know. It's like, that's a hard motherfucker.
Dude,
shit.
it is. There's something to say for method acting too. I don't want to take away from it, but I just think that approach, again, to someone that is that talented, that can be that character in this movie, and just like act like, yeah, it's like nothing, I'm just going home and like whatever.
Yes, sirree.
He's obviously the villain that thrives in it, but the world itself, I felt like was so interesting to look at. And I really liked how there's actually like a tone switch where like early on in the movie, like in the very beginning of it, and it kind of seems, like you said, very traditional 50s style look, sound, vibe, like Little House on the Prairie or some shit. Like it just looks like really traditional. But then when Robert Mitchum gets out of jail and they cut to that scene of the train coming to town, whether they're saying that Robert Mitchum is the train coming to town or he's on this train, whatever it is, like this evil is coming to town. As soon as that happens, everything starts to just change in terms of look and style and like strangeness. It's really interesting how they ebb and flow through those traditional like styles and start to do really like weird.
The music accents that as well. It's very silent film-esque and art house, but like I said, it works as just a straightforward narrative. My mom could watch this movie. For
people who haven't seen this movie or are interested in, and all you do here is like, oh, the visuals, this and that. And I couldn't really even grasp what I was going to see because I had seen that one image of the underwater body and all the seaweed, and it's like beautiful and frightening at the same time. And it's all on a stage. It's all on a set because you have to have this lighting to make these silhouettes.
Which again adds to the dreamlike quality. It wasn't realistic. And again, that adds to the timeless nature of it.
It was my concept completely. When a painter paints a picture, say, what was his concept? It's his style that counts. It's what he thinks and feels and does, and what he reflects and what he has gone through life and so on and so on. You just don't make pictures with just light. There must be a reason.
And it was their choice to make it black and white. They didn't have to make this movie black and white.
I never thought about that. You're right. Color was around in 55.
Like, and what I'm going to say about that is like every time I've ever seen a color still of this movie, like, because there are a few, even the poster being in color, it's not the same thing. This movie has got to thrive in black and white.
Excellent point. I never thought about that. You're right. The black and white being an artistic choice was such a great choice and worked phenomenally.
And it hits on a theme too, where this whole movie is about like dualities and differences in things. So here you've got black and white, or you've got love and hate, or you have good and evil. It's like there's just all these dualities in this movie. It's subtle, but if you really think about it, it's like it's much deeper than you could have even really thought about. So again, Robert Mitchum on that lamppost, awesome scene. The woman underwater, the bedroom scene, like where it almost looks like a chapel. Like the camera's kind of far away and there's like blackness all around it, but the bedroom like shoots up into a point in the air.
That barn, man, when he's on the horse, when he's walking, once the kids get away,
and he's like singing
and all that.
Probably my favorite one is probably this one where he's like outside waiting to strike at that home, and the woman's there with the shotgun, and there's two really awesome parts. One is where you see him outside. The good guy, so to speak, is in the darkness, and the bad guy, so to speak, is in the light. And you see him out there, and she's in a shadow, and then all of a sudden a kid comes in with a candle, and the whole room lights up, and then as soon as she turns the candle off, he's not there anymore. And it's like, it was fucking like freaky. Music you mentioned, haunting, dreamlike. The instrumental score I felt like was pretty traditional sounding, but evil. The one where the little girl on the raft is singing, awesome. And then the main theme, they hit you with it right from the opening credits.
Dream, little one, dream. Dream.
just going back to for a second, just like the dreamlike nature, the movie is from the perspective of children for the most part. Like you're looking at it from like the boy's perspective, and you follow them pretty much through the whole story, including when they get away and when they get rescued, and like
they're the only ones who know what's up.
Yeah, so it's from their perspective, and what Charles Laughton, I guess himself, had said, children, in his opinion, only really pay attention to certain things, but very hyper focus on those certain things. But a lot of the other stuff is kind of like left to interpret in the peripheral. And that's kind of like what we were talking about, like being dreamlike. Like when you try to describe a dream to someone, there's like you were in a world, but you really only remember some of it, you know, like there's holes. A lot of stylistic choices that he made included having like a random picket fence that didn't like go around a house at all. It's just like there. There's parts in like the city where there would be like neon lights around a building, but there's no sign. You just see like this glow. Then the one other example that he specifically gave was back to the parents' bedroom, how like when you're a kid, sometimes your parents' bedroom seems like a little intimidating, or it's like a space you're not supposed to be in. So when you look at their bedroom, it's very intimidating. It's angular, it's sharp. It's like that's how they perceive it, kind of.
Like I said, subconsciously putting you in their minds.
Yeah.
And I think if you can do that without bringing attention to the technique you're doing, that is brilliant. And obviously Laughton did it, because I didn't even pick up on that until you just said it.
The last thing that I just want to say about what I really enjoyed about this movie, supporting character-wise, the one woman at the end, Lillian Gish, I thought she was outstanding as like the foster home sort of like caretaker. Yeah. She has this like awesome like grizzled feel. She has a few really great like one-liners, and I really like how they contrast her against the Shelley Winters character. So hungry to have you need to get married, you need to have a husband at home, you need someone to help you take care of these kids. This woman is like, she figures out who he is in 2 seconds. Yep. Like she picks up on him right away, whereas they were completely seduced. She had this like really great way about her. Like Robert Mitchum's character, let's just put it this way. Once everything's taken care of with him, there's like another maybe like 5 minutes or so that happens with the children and this Lillian Gish person. At the very end, where she gives that monologue about the innocence of children and how well they can bounce back from things, and that's such a pure thing and how we need to preserve that. And she looks at you through the screen. It's like she breaks the fourth wall to tell you that. Dude, it like touched me. Like I was like breathless during that part. I don't know what it was.
You know how many parents in modern time need to hear that?
Dude, it was like a legit message that really landed with me, and I was like, wow, is that the point of this whole movie? Like, did I just get served? Like, it was such an awesome cherry on top to kind of almost say, like, Robert Mitchum, yes, he's this villainous thing, but, you know, once he's taken care of, which he will be, like, this is the thing that we need to really hold dear the most. Like,
This
is the point of the story.
Yeah.
This movie is completely timeless. That's why it was a bomb. People didn't get it. People didn't understand. This movie stands over here, and people weren't ready for such a thing.
If you are somebody who avoids older movies, and there are people out there like that, if you don't like black and white movies, you don't like watching movies that were before your time, take a chance with this one. If you want to pop your cherry and just let me try a classic, this is the one to go to.
Let's jump over to the physical media release. We talked about the movie enough and how wonderful it is, but how wonderful is the disc? This was originally out on DVD and Blu a few times prior, but the biggest upgrade that this movie had ever gotten was the 2014 Criterion release, which Russ happens to have.
Yes, the Blu-ray I have.
Yes, right next to the new Kino Lorber 4K edition. So without comparing it to Criterion release, because I've never seen that in person, all I will say is that this looked incredible. Like, it literally looked like a movie that was shot today. The timeless look of it anyway, but just the quality of what I saw, the clarity of what I saw, it is amazing. The visuals were impeccably preserved. The lighting really lends itself to kind of this kind of a release, the really like stark contrast between the lights and the darks. I will say there are screenshots of the Criterion one online that you can compare, and from what I could gather from the screenshots, there is a difference, but it's subtle.
It's sure the Kino is an improvement in picture quality.
I would say it looks slightly cleaner, sharper, but just slightly. Like if you're not interested in owning 2 copies of this and you already have the Criterion, you probably would be okay with just the Criterion, I would say.
But if you're super fans, like apparently we are, I would recommend getting both, because the biggest draw you're going to get from the Criterion release are the features versus Kino's features, notably a 2.5-hour documentary, which is astounding that even exists.
Well, thank you for rubbing salt in the wound, Russ, because that's actually what I am the most upset by with this Kino release. There's a handful of features, which I'll talk about in a sec, that I think are really nice, but knowing what's on that Criterion, knowing now that I love this movie, I really wish I had that. And when you mentioned that, Russ, it's funny, a silent film technique that he employed for this film was to put a film reel in, roll it, and don't ever stop until the reel is done. So that way you don't have to reset the camera, the lighting, the sound, anything. You just go. So he would let these reels run. So there are hours and hours of footage of behind the scenes stuff, them talking, them, working through the lines.
That must have been.
Mitch, take a deep breath and run as long as you can. Come on, the camera's still running. All right, Mitch, one deep breath.
They took all that footage and they cut it into a 2.5 hour documentary, which is basically them making this movie back in the 50s. You never get a documentary from the 50s about the making of, to my knowledge. But anyway, so tons of special features on there. There are 3 features on this one. One is with Ernest Dickerson, who does go into his influence in Do the Right Thing. What's crazy is I didn't realize that they almost did it word for word.
H-A-T-E. It was with this left hand that old brother Cain struck the blow that laid his brother low. L-O-V-E. You see these fingers, dear hearts, these fingers has veins that run straight to the soul of man.
And there's this great speech about love and hate. Robert Mitchum has love and hate tattooed on his fingers. And at the time, in the hip-hop world, they had these name rings. So I said, let's put love and hate on each one of these rings.
That was the reason I watched this.
Oh, okay.
Because I started hearing about this film. I started hearing about it's one of the greatest of all time. Oh, wait, and he's got the love and hate thing, like Do the Right Thing. And I read that they were actually, like, Spike Lee's a huge fan and was directly influenced. I was like, all right, I'm watching it.
But yeah, Ernest Dickerson talks for a good amount of time. It's pretty good. The double for the little girl that's in this movie, Pearl, she does an interview. She's got a lot to say also. She was like giving all kinds of anecdotes about like the rap party and all these different people she worked with, what they were like on and off screen. Apparently, Robert Mitchum was like a big prankster, which I guess you might have to be when you're engaging with the little children that you're frightening for half the time you know them.
Can I get that through your head, you poor, silly, disgusting little wretch?
My favorite one, and I actually thought it was going to have to do with like art direction or something, but it's just an artist talking about this movie that he really likes. He gives history about the real guy, and then he talks about this film and the differences between it and the book that this movie is also based on. And this guy is like has a ton of knowledge and really went into some of the deeper meanings of this movie. It was really good, but it's not what Criterion's got.
So when I upgrade to 4K, I will be holding on to my Criterion.
So in conclusion, Russ, ultimately, as we said, this movie was panned. It was for being, quote, artsy, weird, and having an offbeat nature. One critic at the time said, "This tries hard to be simple, but winds up being pretentious."
Wow, that is an insult you could lobby against a film that is trying to be artsy, but it doesn't warrant that label, in my opinion.
People, I just don't think we're ready for it. It's just not what 50s films look like, and so they just kind of rallied against it. I think there were also a lot of protests at the time. People are a little bit more religious, perhaps, especially in the area, and it's like they didn't want to see a preacher portrayed as evil. And so there was a lot of backlash about that too. Like we've said, as a result of its failure, he took it personally. Charles Laughton did, never directed again, died 7 years later. Robert Mitchum went on to have great success, strong character actor.
Thank you.
This movie, Russ, do you know, was remade for TV in 1991?
Little devils! Get ready to see hell!
What a fucking joke. If you don't have Robert Mitchum, if you don't have the vision of like a Charles Laughton type that is able to put something like this together, if you don't have Lillian Gish reading you the riot act about how you need to be treating your kids, if you don't have that, you don't have this movie. So it's just a joke. No sequels, no remakes, no reboots. Tired of it.
I want Night of the Hunter 2. I don't want a reboot. I want a sequel.
This movie is a must-own for fans, and so is Night of the Hunter 2. And if you enjoyed this review, let us know below. If you like Night of the Hunter, tell us that. Let us know which version you picked up. If you've seen these special features, let us know how sorely I'm missing out. Come back and join us again soon. Russ, you got anything for the people?
And when they ask who's the fool in the corner crying, I say, little old